Welcome to the Nick, Dick, and Paul Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nick Bilton, a former journalist and screenwriter and documentary filmmaker, and I am not a madman, which will make sense momentarily.
I'm Dick Costolo, the only remaining surviving former Twitter CEO. No, not true.
The only remaining surviving sane.
Oh, all right. No, we mustn't do that. That's not fair at all. And currently an investor.
I'm Paul Kedrosky. I actually invented Bitcoin.
Yeah, there we go.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned that before.
That was last episode, folks. Tune in.
No, that's perpetual.
Please tune in last time.
Yeah, I invented Bitcoin. And also a venture investor.
Also a venture investor. So on today's episode, we're going to be getting a little current. We're going to be talking about the recent assassination attempts and lots of things that are going on in the news. But we're going to begin with something called the Madman theory. Do you want to explain it, or
Paul's best at doing these things?
Okay,
he does a good job.
Yeah, he
of
does.
Saying,
He says
what
words.
it is.
Yeah.
Well, I know some words, but Paul knows
what words
bigger
do
words.
you know?
Well, I know a few. Loquacious, that's one.
Loquacious, it's a good word.
That's a good one. Persnickety is another good
I love
word.
when Paul uses a word that you were like, do I have to pretend I know it?
Yeah,
Or should I look it up? Or
Yeah.
It's a character flaw of mine. I use it just as a test, really.
Got it. Yeah.
I come in with 4 or 5 words preloaded.
And then you so explain the Madman theory to us.
The Madman theory goes back to the Nixon administration, and he's having a conversation in his office.
See, he's already got historical context.
Sorry, I can remove the historical context.
No, it's good. This is why
what's interesting about this, though, is it actually the office was very sparse back then, and now it's gold plated. But that's a whole separate story.
That's a whole separate story. The interior decorations,
gold plated in quotes.
That's right. Possibly not. And so he was explaining at the time his idea. Nixon was explaining his idea to one of his aides that he felt the way to get what he wanted was to make the other side, and in this context, it was in Vietnam, was to make them feel like he wasn't predictable, that he was willing to do or say anything. And he was telling his aide that that's what they needed to communicate to these counterparts. Here's what I think Nixon should do, but he's a madman. He could do anything. I can't predict what he will do, because the idea behind the madman theory is that if your counterparty thinks you're wildly unpredictable, they're more likely to make concessions to prevent those unpredictable things from happening.
It makes non-credible threats seem more credible.
Right.
So they're more willing to make concessions on things they otherwise wouldn't make concessions on.
Because he's nuts, right? But he's a madman. And so this was the idea. But the key idea is that whether or not Nixon was a madman is an open question, but that giving the appearance of being someone who is a dangerous counterparty who might be willing to say or do anything is fundamental to this idea. And strangely enough, like the whole idea of madman theory then got picked up a little bit in the political economics and in government research and government literature. And so this idea, does it actually work? Is it a real thing? And it's actually got a little bit of credence behind it, this idea that people will, to a degree, give concessions if they're uncertain about how rational you actually are as a counterparty. And that's the madman theory.
Do you think that Nixon was like actually a madman and that's made it up to justify his insanity? Like, I'm breaking up with you. I didn't like you anyway. Doesn't matter. Like, or
no. His was very rational.
It was.
Yeah. It was entirely rational. Where he was saying, I don't believe that we can get the concessions we want and get what we want out of Vietnam without them feeling like I'm a more dangerous counterparty. If I look entirely predictable, they're going to run out the string. They're just going to keep on negotiating and never actually giving me anything that I want. I need to look crazier. If I want the kinds of things that I claim to want, I have to handle this completely differently. And so, no, it was done very, rational irrationality. It was rational.
What has the research shown of the effectiveness of it?
So it's modestly effective. The problem is that over time, if you serially pretend to be mad, and present yourself that way and then get the concession you want and then lapse back into sanity, the gig is up pretty quickly, where people realize, okay, this is just a shtick. This is just no different than a comedy routine that you do. It's not that you're actually mad. You're just pretending it to get the concessions. And so it's not there's this idea of finite and infinite games. It's a finite game. You can't play that game forever. You can't keep repeating it and hoping for the same outcome.
So is Donald Trump playing that game over and over and over again and now creating
He says
this?
he is. He literally, there was a piece, was it in the Wall Street Journal or the FT, where insiders were saying, he was saying it straight up that I need to there was was it on Easter Sunday, I think it was, where he put out this profane message on, what's it called?
Truth Social.
Truth Social. I was going to say Talking Social. On Truth Social, where he said, praise Allah, and there was profanities, and it was like all of this crazy stuff on Easter Sunday is just seemed completely. But it was done, according to the Journal's piece that was quoting people inside, that this was done very rationally to look particularly crazy to get the concessions that he wanted out of the Iranian whatever. Well, I was going to say out of the Iranian administration, but that's not even a thing. But out of whatever
whatever's left of the Iranian administration,
coalitions of coalitions exist.
But the problem is that it's now completely backfiring for him because, or maybe not, but it appears like it is because, for example, he's threatened, to literally wipe Iran off the face of the planet. He said he was going to, bomb this and that, and then he didn't. And it's like, drop this nuke. He didn't. He, the same with Russia while he was negotiating Ukraine and so on and so forth. I think the traders now have a thing called TACO, Trump chickens out.
Trump always
chickens out.
Yeah.
And so is it?
But that's the deep problem with the Madman theory, this idea that inevitably you either have to do something genuinely mad or people realize that this is actually just a game theory kind of gambit.
Yeah. Also, nobody executes the madman theory when they feel like they're really winning. Because if you really feel like you're winning,
right. That's a really good
consistency and stability are what you want to project. So it's no coincidence, I guess, that at the present moment you start to hear things come out of China like China will be a reliable force for stability. And China is providing the greatest certainty in this uncertain world. Like that's the way you speak if we've got the upper hand.
Yeah, you don't feel like you have to go to these crazy extremes of pretending I'm a lunatic.
Right.
And matter of fact, and as you say, you kind of open up the field for other people to say, I don't know what this guy's doing, but I'm reliable, right? Which is a bizarre position to have put China in, for example, as a counterparty. Right.
What's interesting is there's also the ancillary result of what happens because of these actions. So, Trump is the most assassination attempts of any president, right? It's one after the other, and we saw this happen at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I actually know some people that were there, and the stories I've heard are bananas of just how lax security was. One thing that I found really fascinating, someone told me this past week was...
That's surprising because...
It's very surprising.
I was at that thing back when I used to be somebody, and...
The 20th CEO of Twitter?
Got invited to things.
Were you really at it?
Yeah.
How many times did you go?
Once.
Did you like it?
I don't know, why are you asking me things like it's an interrogation?
Well, because I'm very curious.
Well, yeah, I liked it.
It was at the Hilton, the same hotel?
Yeah.
And that was funnily enough where Reagan got shot, but yeah.
Well, they all got shot there. That's where the thing always is.
Yeah. Is it a chicken or beef thing or no?
It should be. I don't remember that. That's a good question. It's like it's one of those. Like,
I know it's
2,600 people.
Yeah, it's one of those chicken or beef.
Chicken,
things.
beef, or fish.
Did you get the chicken or the beef or the fish?
All right.
I'm curious. What would you? I never get the fish because I'm always a little worried. It's been sitting out for a while.
I almost certainly got the chicken.
I always get the beef. Because the chicken might be undercooked, the beef, you're safe. But keep going.
I was sitting at a table next to George Clooney is really the only thing I remember. And he had literally two people around him preventing women from coming up to introduce themselves to George Clooney.
All the time. Paul and I do that all the time.
I was like, God, I should have done that.
Just like Kedrosky has happened. This feels so familiar.
This is pre.
You were going to say
this is pre Amal.
And Obama was president then?
Yes.
And was security crazy?
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, of course it was crazy. Like, here's the president. We all know the president's going to be here. So I was surprised, and of course now, I mean, of course you hear it in hindsight, security was lax.
After the fact.
Because after the fact that this, guy sprinted through. But it was bonkers security.
What was so lax about it?
Well, there's two things. One is I have a friend who was there who said that they showed up a little early because they were at a party in the hotel and they came down and
the Secret Service was just in their underwear.
And
guns on the floor.
Guys just wait.
Oh man, hold on, give us 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Secret Service was playing video games. They had a hacky sack. No, there was the Secret Service wasn't really there. There was a few milling about. This was like an hour before. Literally, they said
before. They've got to be there like
weeks before.
I'm telling you, I've heard this from numerous people. The other thing I heard was
this sounds like after the fact.
This has been reported too. I'm not like breaking news here on the thing. The other thing I heard was, well, first of all, the tickets were literally printed out paper. There was no barcode scanning. It was literally you showed the ticket. And there were people who had forgotten their tickets that were literally just showing on their phone the screenshot of the invitation they had gotten and they were being let in. So someone I spoke to said there's a very real...
As you can see, I have a text on my phone from someone named Kosh Patel that says, "Come to the Correspondents' Dinner tonight!" ! But people were saying, like, they were saying, I was looking around thinking, like, shouldn't security be a little tighter here? And so on. Anyway, the other thing was, so this was the part that I found fascinating, and this has been reported and hasn't really been picked up for whatever reason, but Trump afterwards shared on Truth Social the video of the guy running through like a linebacker. I've seen that.
But you haven't seen the video of them grabbing him. Why?
Correct.
Because he tripped and fell, apparently. So, and they haven't shown that because it doesn't look good. So he comes running through. The door was actually open. Mm-hmm. So someone I know who's a journalist was just leaving the bathroom and saw the guy running, tripped and fell. And then it's unclear who shot who and how and so on. But then they piled on him. But the door was open, and had he not have tripped and fallen, he would have made it into that room. So that to me tells you that they weren't necessarily as organized as they should have been. Don't you find that interesting?
No, it all seems strange though. Like, I don't understand. Like, if you ever have been around a presidential event at all in any form in any place, there's advanced teams, and there's snipers on roofs, and it's just endless.
Endless.
Right?
Like blocks away, blocks away.
I know.
Right. And it's not like this was the Republican convention. It wasn't like he thought he was going to a safe place. This was like journalists, right?
Yeah.
You know, like it must have, at the very least, it was a neutral place where you needed to spend a lot of time scrutinizing. And so none of it makes sense to me.
No, none of it makes sense to me either.
Like
what also doesn't make sense is that this guy had a shotgun because...
that is the dumbest move ever.
No. 8 feet? You have to be 8 feet away from someone to kill them with the shotgun? Did he really think he was going to make it 8 feet?
Why are you looking at me when you ask how far away do you need to be?
Because you just said it's the dumbest move ever.
With a shotgun. I mean, just
as our shotgun specialist.
Here's Dick Costolo with the ballistics report.
we now go live to Dick Costolo with a ballistics report.
But see, I think that's trying to make someone who's doing an irrational act seem like they're probably spent more time thinking about it than they did. Because if you think it through, there was no...
Yeah. I mean, he took an Amtrak 4 days, rented out a hotel room.
A lot of people do those things.
That doesn't signify
still
planning.
Not sanity tells.
Yeah, right.
So no, I there's no question that seems, but the crazier part for me just seems to be, it's surprising that having seen these kinds of events and how much work was into them, that something bizarre about how porous it was. I don't even pretend to understand that.
I completely agree. I've been to those events at the New York Times when presidents showed up and there were literally guys on the Port Authority roof. There were, the streams and streams of soldiers and FBI agents, and you weren't even allowed to get in the elevator.
Also, apparently the code word for saying the president's under attack
blue
is just the word blue.
Blue.
So simply running into a room and starting to shout primary colors will incur Secret Service crossfire.
Yeah, which is good to know, obviously.
Yeah, it's helpful.
Given my tendency, this Tourette's thing. And
that was my favorite little fact that I learned during this was the
That's
blue.
it, blue?
It was blue.
That's
all the
all you
guys
got?
running around yelling, blue, 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 blue. I was like, what is
I just
that?
think, though...
And then shooting at each other.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy
In
who
their
got
underwear.
shot, it's not clear.
Who shot that agent?
Yeah.
Yeah, and his phone protected him.
Yeah, I heard the phone took a
what?
piece of the...
Yeah.
The phone took a piece of the bullet.
Yeah.
Probably an iPhone. Those things are so heavy.
It definitely wasn't an Android.
No, my Android would have gone straight through. It would have been all over for me. There's no question.
But it goes back to this Madman theory. The thing I think that's interesting is there are repercussions to this, right? There are things that happen. Yes, it may be a smart move by Nixon to have done it, but is Trump just completely missing the point and just doing it over and over because that's the only thing he knows how to do?
Yeah, but I think it's, if you go back to his career as a business person, he was as a real estate developer, that was his approach even then, was to ask for extremes and then to posture that if I don't get that, I'm going to have to take this thing into bankruptcy. And it was these two polar extremes. As I either need radical concessions or this company, this casino, this whatever is likely to be bankrupt. And so this idea of negotiating from extreme positions has been his MO as long as he's been able to
I think
negotiate.
that's just his natural personality.
Right.
Natural
Go
personality
to extremes
trait.
and demand the extreme and then settle in the middle and declare victory.
Right.
Is Elon doing this? Is there, like, other business people that do this?
I don't know many that do. It's just not maybe maybe Karp does a bit at Palantir, but I think he saves it mostly for earnings calls where it's just this like, have you seen some of the videos where he's
No, what does he do?
He's doing this. He's jumping
bouncing up and down in his chair.
up and down in his
unable
chair.
to sit still. He's on stage with Andrew Ross Sorkin. He was unable to.
He couldn't sit. His legs curling underneath.
Or he's acting like he can't sit still, and he's curling his legs underneath. Now not. Now up, and he's now standing.
But
up.
I hope you shareholders are really excited about what we're doing, and we are really excited too. And sometimes we have to kill people. This is not something I was expecting on an earnings call.
Why does he jump up and down and move around?
I think it's because of this idea that he's trying to, and again, this is maybe imparting more conscious thought to it than there is, but I think he wants to present this really, I'm not like the other guys. I'm this kinetic, unpredictable personality. I'm a rule breaker. I'm an iconoclast. I'm all these things. And I think in part that's what's going on is all of these people are gray and predictable and traditional. And I am a madman. I'm a wild thing out here. And that's what makes me distinctive.
Do you think Elon does some of this a little bit with his tweeting or is it just he's a real madman? There's no theory going on there.
I don't. I think for him, it's mostly natural. That's just his.
That's his
MO, I think.
What about like other world leaders, Putin, Kim Jong-un, Xi, things like that? Are they partaking in it, or it's just America?
It's literally just America. I mean, certainly in the developed world. I can't speak to like sub-Saharan African leaders, but in the developed world, like it's a uniquely, not just an American phenomenon, it's a uniquely Trumpian phenomenon. And again, the problem is you serially lose at this game, and that's why you end up with this taco problem where the people have learned that he's going to chicken out. And of course, that then becomes perverse because the reverse then happens because if I announce I'm about to do something really dangerous and the markets don't react to it, because that's been the discipline. When he says something particularly outrageous, the markets react and sell off. But if the markets don't believe that he's actually going to do it in the first place, that he will chicken out, then the markets don't sell off. Well, if the markets don't sell off, there's no pressure on him to back out of what he was going to do. So in a perverse sort of way, you make the madman madder. You push them further into a corner where they have to do things that are increasingly extreme.
What's interesting, though, is the converse of that is that the crypto markets move 6.5% based on what he says. So that is actually affected by it, whereas the traditional markets are not.
Yeah, I think commodity markets move a lot. Like, for example, oil has moved hugely as a result of what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, but equity markets increasingly don't take it seriously. But that's obviously hugely risky because if the markets are no longer disciplining you, like they used to be back in the Clinton era, we talked about the bond vigilantes, this idea that the bond market was disciplining Clinton. He couldn't talk about more government spending because all of a sudden the bond market would sell off and then be facing higher yields, and that in turn would make more debt more expensive. And so it's like, okay, I have to back off from these really aggressive plans. So, but if the market's no longer acting like the bond vigilantes of that period, and not disciplining them, then where's the pressure? It's certainly not coming from Congress. So if it's not financial markets and it's not Congress, then all you know for sure is you will get more extreme positions. And whether they work or not, it's a separate issue. But you will get increasingly extreme positions because of the disciplining is not happening.
Yeah, and then again, going back to China, they seem to increasingly realize don't have to take this seriously, right? And Xi apparently concluded after remember the 2025 tariff climb down where without China doing anything, he lowered the tariffs from 145% to something like 30%, but without China making any concessions. He sort of was apparently quoted as saying, my adversary has a pain point, which is the exact opposite of what the Madman theory is supposed to project. So I think they just realize by simply sitting back here and projecting calm, we are increasingly in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and it's to the point that that's actually been operationalized. I think I don't know if it's JP Morgan or Goldman or someone. They have an index now, which is called the Trump Pressure Index. And what it is, it's a composite measure that measures his popularity rating, gas prices, and the yield on one short-term instrument. And basically, it's hugely predictive of the likelihood of him reversing because it's recognizing that all of these things are the things that he pays the most attention to.
I feel like he's reversed on everything recently.
Yeah, but in terms of when he will reverse.
Got it.
So the moments, the idea that he'll eventually reverse is kind of neither here nor there, but when it will happen, it tends to be a function of popularity ratings and gas prices.
Well, there's also something that has happened as a result of...
Can I just say one thing? There's one, as you were asking, who is Trump really the only one?
Yeah.
The two things that came to mind, and people are going to take this out of context, so I just have to,
Are you going to get canceled for this?
Probably.
Great.
Is you could in some ways think of Steve Jobs as, the reality distortion field as he would regularly say things that he didn't actually believe to be true. I remember. I'll give you one example from my time at Twitter, which was I had a phone call with him, and he said, "I want to talk to you about investing in Twitter. I would like to put $200 million or so into Twitter. Can you come down and talk to me about it?" Very sort of earnest, short conversation. And I called Bill Campbell, who was on the board of Apple and Steve's buddy and was, the Benchmark folks had brought him into Twitter as well. And like, hey, Bill, this is crazy. I just got a call from Steve Jobs. He wants to put $200 million into Twitter. I'm going down there tomorrow to talk to him. And Bill goes, he doesn't want to put $200 million into Twitter. Like, no, sorry. I'm not explaining myself. I literally just got off the phone with him and he said, and Bill just goes, he's not going to put $200 million in Twitter. I'm like, well, why did he's like, he's just saying that he wants to see what happens.
What do you mean to see what happens?
He just wants to see he's like this, I'll just do a little experiment and see what happens if I say this because maybe it's something that's interesting to talk about. He's not going to put $200 million. Go down there the next day. Right away at the beginning of the meeting, he's like, it's probably not a good idea to, right away. Steve's away. It's probably not a good idea to invest. But what about, and then I remember he chided me or lectured me for 15 minutes on why Twitter wasn't more open and like Apple, for example, should be able to create names in the Twitter namespace because open platforms are more successful than closed platforms. And I was like,
just like on iMessage.
I was like, well, the App Store, for example, he's like, no, the App Store is totally open. I was like, okay, not really, surely. And anyway, I sat there and was like, am I nuts or yeah. So there was a little bit of that.
I can see that,
and
I can see that. I've had that experience.
If you talk to Forstall or Tony Fadell or any of the folks who were there in the during his run, they would tell you, there was that was a real thing, the reality distortion field, and they all have numerous stories about it.
I have one. I was at the New York Times. I'd just become a tech reporter. I've been there.
Paul, we're going to go around and name drop our Steve Jobs stories.
No. It's a perfect example of it.
I knew I was going to get one upped.
So he'd come so they have whenever there's a new device, he would go and have these off the record conversations at the Times, the Journal, and so on. And
Walt Mossberg,
yes, remember him. And he showed up at the
Walt Mossberg is listening to this going, I'm still here. I'm like, what do you mean, remember him?
I'm here.
Guys, I'm still here.
Wow. That was belabored breathing even.
Well, he's an older guy.
Wow.
Am I going to
All right.
get canceled?
Yeah,
for this?
you're in trouble.
No, well, we all get old, so there you go.
Right.
Anyway, so he shows up to show the new iPad, and I had been a reporter for a couple of years, so I was still like a baby cub reporter, but I was covering Apple, and Brad Stone, who was the Apple beat reporter, who now is at Bloomberg, was to my right, and then Steve was here, and it was this big, huge conference room, and probably 40 people, the editor-in-chief, like all my bosses and everything. And he's talking about the iPad and how it's going to be a new part of their business and so on and so forth. And he yelled at me because I was pressing it too hard with the screen. But at one point I said to him, Steve, you had once said on about a year ago that you were putting out the Apple TV, and that you looked at Apple as a three-legged stool with the different components, the iPod, so on and so forth, and that the Apple TV was going to be the fourth leg, turning it into a four-legged stool, and so on. And I was like, and it hasn't done very well, and no one's really purchased it. Like, how do you feel about that? And he said, I never said that. And I was like, no, you said the three-legged stool, da-da-da-da-da. And he was like, I never said that. And then I said it again, and he yelled at me. He goes, Nick, I never said that. And the whole room just looked at me. And today I would have been like, you're a fucking full of shit. Yeah, you did. But back then I was like, oh God, am I going to piss off Steve Jobs? And then
they're going to start going through my garbage.
Yeah. And
that's it for you.
That was it. And it was this this distortion Madman experience. That
so there was a little bit of
it's an interesting. It's a good example. I mean, my job story was much briefer. I was at an event. He was standing. There was a group of people. We walked over. Two of us walked over where he was chatting, and he said, "Hey," I said, "Hey, my name is Paul Kedrosky," and he said, "What do you do?" And I told him, and he turned his back and walked away. So clearly a madman, right? Because he didn't want to engage.
Yours is the best one.
Yeah, he didn't want to engage at all. But it's true though. Like some CEOs, that's a good point. I don't think they go all the way, but I know a few that go out of their way to unsettle people around them.
That's the part that's interesting, is they go out of their way, because I think that there are a lot of CEOs that I've interacted with who are out of their minds, and it's hard to decipher if it's part of an act. Which with Karp, everyone says there's an act going on, and with others, it's like, are you just an asshole?
Can be both.
Yeah, it can be both.
Yeah. But I think there's an element of, and I think, and I see this in particular in some larger organizations, where to keep other people at a distance and make them feel like, performance matters, not your personal relationship with me. There is an element of trying to unsettle people with behaviors that can seem unpredictable and.
Well, you've seen. I mean, look, the stories about Sam Altman with OpenAI. Like, you're seeing, Ronan Farrow wrote that great piece in the New Yorker recently, and one of the things that it's been in the Wall Street Journal too, and the FT and so on, but one of the things that you've seen is he tries to put people in unsettling situations, like hiring two people for the same job, or
telling people someone said this about you, and to the point that I think there was a story, I think it was in Ronan's story, where they came back into the room and said, did you actually say this? And they said no. And Sam then immediately, of course, denied the thing that he had said 5 minutes earlier.
And that's is that like a mad boy theory? Like, is that
mad boy theory? He's not that young,
I know, but it's like it didn't work.
I think there's some of that there. There was a great piece I think it was in the Financial Times today, about how Project Stargate is kind of.
What's Project Stargate
That's
again?
the big data center project that he did in conjunction. That OpenAI was going to do in conjunction with Oracle, with support from the U.S. government. How it's essentially falling apart. And one of the claims in the middle of the piece was this is very much par for the course for Sam, because there's this. You just you walk away from something in the middle of it, and because it's not suiting you, and then pretend it never happened. And Stargate the allegation was that this is in part, that kind of thing, that it served the purpose of presenting a position that we're going to have this massive amount of compute, don't compete with us because we have the U.S. government supporting us, and blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, now that it seems less likely to be working out the way they wanted, well, we're not going to expand the Abilene facility. We're not building this Norwegian data center. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. But you pretend the prior thing never happened, right? And that's, for me, is part and parcel of a low-rent version of the Madman theory, right?
One question I have to kind of...
It makes life difficult for people like the CFO because they have to then... So Sarah, help us understand. Like, well, you end up having to do RFK. Well, when what he meant by down 600%.
Yeah, right. No. Yeah. You put the people around you in impossible positions, especially if they're in like a financial role where there's no real room for just screwing around.
That's correct. That's why I specifically referenced the CFO. The CFO is, on the hot seat for, hey, especially if you're about to file, if you're in the process of writing an S1 or the like, and you're being asked a question publicly, and there's no room for screwing around with, hey, you're going to be on the record for this. So having to sort of work your way through some language that defends what was said or not said in a way that maps to what the accounting docs are going to say in a month is difficult.
I think I told you guys this story before, but in my analyst days, there's a company I followed that was in Toronto, and I had said something vaguely critical, like not even really critical, about what they were doing. And it was me, the CEO, and the CFO. Did I tell you this story before? Me, the CEO, and the CFO were on a call. And so they're both in his office at the company headquarters. And the CEO's name was Fred, and Fred was like, absolutely freaking out at me over the phone. He was like, "You stupid asshole, you should have called me first." And of course I had called him first, but nevertheless, he didn't care about that part anymore. Yeah. And he was just blowing a gasket over what I had said. And I was like, it really wasn't that bad. It was just saying, like, I think that they're going to be transitioning from this product to this product or whatever else. And he's like, F you, blah, blah, this is just insane. I said, you're never going to get any access to us again. And I heard a huge bang, like possibly he had, let off a gun or something. And then I'm like, this dead silence. And I said, hello? And the CFO, who was in the room the whole time, his name was Inder. Inder says, hello. And I said, is it just us? He said, yeah. He said, he slammed the door, ran out of his own office, slammed the door, and left me and the CFO in the room as the only people left because he had, completely freaked out. And I was like, was I wrong? And he said, just a second. And I hear tap, 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 tap. He walks over to the door, makes sure it's closed. He said, no. Because he was in an impossible position, right? Yeah. But the CEO's whole shtick was to try and control the narrative. And
you see this all the time with things like Carolyn Levitt and the having to go in front of the press after something that is said. And he said one thing and then contradicted himself 2 seconds later. And now she's got to jump through some hoops to make it sound like it was make it all make sense when in fact it makes no sense at all.
Well, one question just to wrap this all up, to bring it back to Trump and his theories.
I want to go back to also, before we totally wrap it up, when you were talking about the can't remember the guy's name, Cole, whatever, who he apparently had told his sister in advance of going that he was a member, she tells the Secret Service he was a member of a group called the Wide Awakes. Yeah. So then they go and find out there's like 4 groups called the Wide Awakes.
This is really funny.
The Wide Awakes, all of whom now are trying to be like, no, we're the new Wide Awakes. It's like Spinal Tap. No, there's already a band called the Originals. Okay, so we changed ourselves to the new Originals.
What was it? The Judean People's Front.
Yeah, the People's Front. No, we're the People's Front of Judea.
Yeah.
So these groups, all of which are called the Wide Awakes, are out there now going like, no, we're not that Wide Awakes. We're the other Wide Awakes. We're the artsy Wide Awakes.
That's right. One of them called themselves the artsy Wide Awakes.
We're an art collective.
We're not the assassin Wide Awakes. Speaking of the assassin Wide Awakes, we are at a moment in time where, and this is something we've all talked about, it's a 30-year high of political violence, right? Mm-hmm. More assassination attempts than ever, and so on and so forth. One of the things not just assassination attempts, but I mean, I think the pattern historically has been political violence, in particular in this country, has been much more of on the political right from the data. Now, this is just self-identified. It doesn't mean that this isn't turned into a partisan issue of who's the most dangerous. Wait, the data has said it's on the political right. But the data
40 years.
But now it's switched.
Right. So what's interesting is this transition all of a sudden. Where
it's switched, but they're both up.
They're both very high.
Up. Right. The left is higher.
Yes.
Right.
And the left, and so my question is.
That's a good point, though.
But the left has traditionally, the Weather Underground and, all these groups.
Back in the day, yes.
Yeah, yes. Back in the day.
From the 80s on, it's been largely
a right-wing phenomenon.
The violence has been largely a right-wing phenomenon in this last year, it's flipped, and there are now more left-wing acts of violence than right, but they're both way up.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I mean, don't forget the people in Minnesota who are not by ICE, but the state congressman and his wife who were both killed, et cetera.
Yeah. Do you think that this is? I have my own opinions, but I'm curious, and Dick is going to roll his eyes at me when I say this word, but like, is it because of Trump's actions? Is it because of social media? Is it because of,
Yeah, I do think it's because of a lot of the anger entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I mean,
Anger
we've talked about this
entrepreneurs.
before.
Yeah.
The benefit and financial benefits that accrue to anger entrepreneurs on social media by getting you riled up about those people fosters a bunch of this stuff.
There's no incentive. There's no money in saying this may all work out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But why is this?
There's no money in saying, like, well, let me help you understand why those people are thinking these things.
But business didn't work that way 20, 30, 40 years ago. Like, that wasn't Sears. They weren't out there being angry entrepreneurs, the CEO.
Yeah, but we now have this algorithmic phenomenon.
So it's all the technology.
I'm convinced it's a huge factor here. That it's, to Dick's word, the anger entrepreneurs have found a way to monetize dissent and polarization, and then the algorithms jump on it because attention is a signal, and as soon as you get attention, the signal intensifies, and so you get more of the extremes.
More madmen.
Well, not even madmen, because the madmen are conscious of what they're doing. This is very different. This is more like a virus where it's infecting people. I was telling Dick this story before we got on air that about a friend of mine who's out of nowhere is increasingly convinced like the moon landing is faked.
Well, it is.
Well, yeah. And Elvis is alive.
But these are legitimately
smart people. Yeah,
legitimately smart people
running profitable businesses.
Right.
We're like, well, obviously the 3 Trump assassinations,
were all staged.
this one was staged. You're
staged.
like, what?
Right.
No, the guy was killed. He definitely wasn't paid to go up on the roof and then we're going to shoot you.
Right.
And no, that was all staged.
And all of that, I'm convinced, is the not just the radicalization, but the reinforcement of the radicalization is algorithmic. Because once you start to immerse yourself and marinate in it, you just get more of it and more of it and more of it, and you're reinforced all the way down the line, which is, I think, part of the reason why we're seeing these serial attempts, because it's not just about the nature of Donald Trump. It's also about, or more about, this environment that leads to radicalization and intensification and this feeling like I have no other choice because it's an existential moment. If I don't do something now, and we heard this back in back in 2021 at January 6th, I need to save the country. Everyone feels like they need to save the country. So it's like, wait a minute, if we all need to save the country, we all actually agree on something. Let's just save the country. No, it's that I have to save the country from those guys, right? It's always those guys, and that's the anger entrepreneurs creating that.
Does AI help turn this back, or does it make it worse?
There was a funny I think it
makes it. I think it helps.
I think it helps.
Weird.
Yeah.
How?
I think because, as we've talked about before, AI recenters people via its answers. Because AI is based on all the amalgamation of all the information it's collected, its answers point toward the center. Median response, the center response.
You sent an article about this, right?
Yeah, the FT had a really good piece about it, how it was depolarizing to some extent because of exactly what Dick's describing.
Was it depolarizing the right more or the left, or was it both the same?
Both sides. Both sides are getting pulled towards the middle. But the problem, of course, is that's a temporary phenomenon. Why is it a temporary phenomenon? It's a temporary phenomenon because we're in this weird moment where most of the data is all of this sort of massive data across all of the public internet. What we're increasingly seeing is narrower slices of data being used to train new models. Like I saw one the other day that was just trained on 19th century novels. So you're going to see stuff that's increasingly pulling.
You're going to see people quoting Jane Eyre as they sprint through the ballroom.
Or just trained on like Fox News, or just trained on the New York Times
with a musket.
But I just think you're going to see these narrow models reemerging. Yeah. So this idea that it's a guaranteed thing that they will always be pulling towards the middle. Actually, I think that's a temporary phenomenon. I think you're going to see it actually start to reverse again as people start to exploit, these narrower models that just tell me what I want to think. I don't like being told that, the moon landing's not fake because I know it's fake.
Yeah. I love the idea of the next assassin wearing like a Wuthering Heights baseball hat backward.
Heathcliff. Anyway.
Do you have a joke for our out here?
I just did it. How come you always ask right after the big reveal?
Because you should be like, and that's been another episode of the Nick, Dick, and Paul Show.
Been another episode of the Nick, Dick, and Paul Show.